All right, today we're going to be taking some notes on consumer applications and how we use proportions in the real world. So, first we're just going to fill in some blanks. We're going to talk about how we can find the percent of a subtotal. So sometimes we talk about percents of money when we talk about transactions, like going out to eat, leaving a tip, or going shopping and paying tax, or even having coupons to take money off. So the steps that we do that, there's two steps. First, you need to change the percent to a decimal, which we know. That means that you move the decimal 2 spaces to the left. And then the second step is that we multiply the decimal by the subtotal. So we're going to do 2 examples. In my first example, it says Alyssa and her parents are going out for dinner, and Alyssa said that she would help out and pay the tip. The dinner bill was $52.88, and Alyssa wants to leave an 18% tip. How much does Alyssa need to pay? Well, in this case, I only care about finding out how much Alyssa needs to pay for the tip. I don't need to know the total with the tip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my percent, that 18%, and figure that out as a decimal. Remember, if I don't see a decimal, I put it at the right, a different color. And I'm going to hop 2 spots to the left. So 18% is the same as 0.18, or 1800ths. And then I need to figure out how much she's going to actually pay. So I got to use that decimal, 0.18, and multiply by 52.88. Well, I'm going to take my calculator, plug that in, 0.18 times 52.88, and I get $9 and then some decimals. But with money, I can only have that second decimal after, or the second number after the decimals. So looking at the 8, I know that I need to round up. So Alyssa needs to leave $9.52. And that's my answer to the question. Let's look at example number 2. In example 2, Carlos is going shopping and has a coupon for 20% off. And it says, how much will she save on a shirt that costs $12.76? We're going to go ahead and fix that typo. It really should be, how much will he save on a shirt that costs $12.76? So looking at step number 1, first I need to take that percent and move it and change it into a decimal. Well, 20% is an easy one. Hop 2 spots to the left. That equals 0.20, 20 hundredths. And now I'm ready to do my multiplying. So I'm going to use 0.20 times 12.76. And when I type that into my calculator, I end up with 2.552. And again, whenever we're talking about money, I can only have 2 numbers after the decimal. That 2 tells me to keep the 5 on the same. So he saves $2.55. All right, now there's also other scenarios where we have to find the new total. So we have to use the percent that they talk about, but then we also have to change it using the total that they told us. So let's see what that looks like. First, we need to find the percent, and then we need to find the new total. Now, there are 2 different ways that we can find that new total. Sometimes we need to add, and that's when we know that we need to pay more using the percent. So things like tax, tip, markups. Those are all scenarios where we would need to add that percent onto our total. Now in other cases, we end up subtracting. That's when we pay less. So things like having a discount, coupons, markdowns, and sometimes we even see money off. Those are all scenarios where we would need to subtract. So let's look at our examples and see if we can decide if we need to pay more or pay less. In that first example, it says, what will I pay if I want to buy a $25.87 pair of pants with a 15% markdown? Well, first thing I see is I see my two numbers that I'm going to be using, but I also see that keyword markdown. And remember, markdowns are paying less, so I need to subtract. So I'm going to write myself a little note so that I can use that when I get to step 2. First, though, I have to figure out what that percent actually is. So I have to change 15% to a decimal. Remember, that's 2 hops to the left, 0.15. And then I need to multiply. And when I plug that into my calculator, I get 3.8805, and remember, I need to round because we're talking about money. The 0 keeps it the same, so I'm talking about $3.88. But this is all just step 1. I was finding that percent, and I know that my percent is $3.88. But I need to subtract that money because I want to know the new total, how much I'm going to pay in all. So I'm going to take what I knew it was. Well, it started out as $25.87, and now I'm going to subtract the $3.88. And that gives me a new total of $21.99. And that's my answer to that problem. So make sure that you do both steps when they talk about how much you're going to pay, because this is a total here. Let's go ahead and look at the next example. It says, what will I pay if my bill for lunch was $15.24 and I want to leave an 18% tip? Well, I see my total before, and that I want to leave 18%. And that word tip here is going to add on to that total. So let's first figure out how much tip that actually is. Well, 18% is the same as 0.18, and then I need to take that decimal and multiply by 1524 to get my amount that I'm tipping the waiter. And I have 2.7432. I need to round because we're talking about money. So 2.74 is how much I'm leaving for tip. That's not my final answer, though. I have to now add that to my total. So I'm going to use 1524 and add that 274. And I've got 1798. So including the amount that I have to pay towards the tip, I have to end up paying $17.98 for lunch. We're going to have a lot of time to practice these in our practice pages as well.